So I've got the rudder linkage installed permanently now. So I've got that part done, and the hoses, exhaust hoses, are installed permanently now. And then what I ended up doing is on the exhaust hoses, I have one hose clamp there, and I went ahead and put one back here. So I'm happy to have that done. And then I did the final installation of all that structure for the ski tow pylon, and including these angle supports. And then, and what I've got done now is I have this part of this epoxied in now. I've got both sides of this deck beam epoxied in, and then these 4 pieces here epoxied in, and then I'll work on the rest of them later. And I did check the angle of this because I wanted it to be 90 degrees to the motor stringers, and it's almost exact. It's off just barely, but nobody ever noticed that. So yeah, I'm working on getting this decking in place. So that will be nice to have that part done. And then I think and then what I've got to do is bolt that. Even though that linkage is mounted permanently, I still need to get this secured, bolted in place. I'm not going to epoxy anything down, so I can remove it if need be. There are 4 bolts that bolt that steering cylinder down to that support there, and then this whole support thing actually gets bolted to this frame piece. And then I also need to hook up, I've got a Zerk fitting, basically grease extension hose that will get installed, but that'll get done later because I'm going to work on a bulkhead here next. And then we'll see about securing these flooring support, the part that the center flooring bolts to. I'm going to secure those down permanently. I mean, I'm not going to actually epoxy them, but my plan is actually for all these parts that like that little support, or for the steering cylinder, any part that contacts the bottom of the boat, I'm going to use a little silicone just to kind of, it's not really gluing it, but to get it so it's just got something to hold it down so it won't vibrate, especially here like these parts. And I'll show these probably I think I talked about them in a past video, but that's basically what this center part flooring sits on. And I'm only going to screw them on this side. That side, there's be no screws down in the batten there. I mean, mainly because I can't get a screwdriver down in there. But I'll use a little silicone and to make it so those don't vibrate. So here's what the back decking, the framing looks like. It's all epoxied in now. And so I pre-encapsulated the bottom and sides of all these pieces before I glued them in, just to make it easier. But I probably should have encapsulated this. I'll have to do that now. There's no taking it out now, so I'll do it in place. And but that's what it looks like. So now what I'm starting to work on is thinking about a bulkhead here. My plan is to have a plywood bulkhead, basically from stringer to stringer. And I want to bolt it to this. That'll help provide strength there, because if I'm pulling a tuber, if they get up on this deck, I want it to be strong enough. And that span is a pretty big span. So that's the purpose of that bulkhead. I made a template bulkhead piece just out of regular plywood, and I'll use the good stuff here when I'm ready. But this is what it's looking like, and I was thinking I would bolt this to that, but I won't be able to because I need to be able to get this out. If I ever need to service that fuel tank, I need to be able to get the fuel tank out, which means I got to get this out. Once the deck is in place, I will not be able to bolt this. So my plan is to have to provide the support needed to hold this up. I'm going to have blocks, something like pieces like this that I'm going to epoxy in place under here, which will be epoxied to this bulkhead, the backside of this bulkhead, and those are what will provide the support. And then I'll probably just screw this in. If you're wondering why I only went up this far, it's because when the back seat, it's at an angle, and I didn't want it to be pushed forward too much. So that's why I have that like that. And what I am going to do is I'll put a veneer, probably 5 or 6 millimeter veneer on that, so it will be pushed out a little bit. But this is basically, well, it will be 12 millimeter ply, which is essentially 1/2 inch. And I just didn't want it pushing that back seat forward so much. So anyway, I'm still thinking about it, but this is kind of what I'm going for right now. And then I'm going to have, my plan is to have a cross member epoxy lumber to the front side of this bulkhead that'll help provide more strength. And then I'm also on the back side here, falling down, on the back side, going from top to bottom, roughly 1 inch wide. Well, I'm thinking about that possibly, or I may just epoxy just a little blocking member on the other side here to provide support here. So I'm still thinking about it, but this is kind of where I am so far. So I cut the bulkhead piece out of the 12 millimeter ply of the good plywood, and I've also got a little spacer cut here, just because for this to be 90 degrees relative to the stringer, needs to be a little spacer there. And I've got the other on the other side done. And then this piece, like I mentioned, that's lumber that will provide some more support across that span to help if anybody sits basically up on this deck. And if you notice, when I made the template before, it actually had an arc to match the arc of this, and I decided just make it straight, and it's a little lower in the center, and that actually helps the seat when it goes up. It doesn't really push it out a whole lot, and so I was able to actually go up higher on the ends. It's higher, of course, and then it's a little lower there. And so I've still got to make the pieces that will be epoxy to the backside of this bulkhead that will rest on here. They will not be epoxy to this. They'll be epoxy to the bulkhead, so I can take that bulkhead out like I mentioned. And then I still do plan on putting a vertical strip of lumber on each side. I don't have room to do it in front of the tank because the tank is too close. I've only got about 5/8 of an inch, and I thought about putting maybe a 1/2 inch strip. I might actually do that in the center, just to provide some support, but I may not. I'll see. But I'm going to do that. I'm planning on doing it on the both outside parts, and then I will have the piece epoxied right up snug to the bottom side of this deck beam, and that way that'll support that as well. So my intent is to have on each and a support, basically be up on here that'll hold this edge, bottom edge of this, and one in the center, and I'm probably gonna put 2 on either side in the center. So I'll have essentially 5 of them that'll help basically hold all that weight, and so that should be nice and strong.